so I just want to encourage people that get down, because I've been in those situations, to continue to trust God and lean on God. God will send a lot of times somebody along the way that will encourage you. And, I love that poem by Langston Hughes, Mother to Son. And it's like, don't you sit down on those crystal stairs. We can't afford to. Our ancestors have done way too much. I'm nothing if my girls do not know the word of God and I haven't poured the same wisdom, the same confidence in them.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Unleashed with Eva. I thank you for browsing my channel. I see that you guys have been interacting and sharing a lot of my videos, and I want to say thank you for that. So if you're watching right now, your first time to my channel, there's a red subscribe button right below this video. Please go ahead and click subscribe so that every time we release a new video, that it comes right to your email. Share this clip with a friend. But today, I am interviewing somebody that holds so many different spaces in my life and wears a lot of hats in the world. If I had 3 words to describe her, it would be nurturing, bold, and funny. And I know it's hard to get all of these people, it seems, into bold, nurturing, and funny, but that is who Azzie Taylor is. Azzie, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you could come, but I want to tell everybody Azzie is my sister. She's my spiritual sister, but first she's my biological sister. She's my shiro, and she's older than me. We have probably about 5 years in between us, so she's always been that. I cannot ever see her as anything other than my big sister, but as time goes on, you realize that sometimes you have people in your life that are incredible if you just stand back and look at it. And so to everybody else, you may see that incredibleness, but as the closer you are to people, sometimes we can forget how great you really are. And a lot of times I sit back and I thank God for who my siblings are, who my parents are, but especially who my sister is. So I just want to say that before we get started. But Azzie, I want you to go ahead and tell my listeners who you are in your own words.
Again, my name is Azzie Taylor. I am 44 years old. Proud to say that right now before I get too old. I am a mother of 2 beautiful young girls, 13 and 11. I grew up with a total of 6 siblings, so there were 7 of us. 3 boys older than I was, and I had 2 brothers and of course, Eva, my sister. And so I grew up in the middle. I am a Christian believer. I am a prosecutor. I've worked at the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office. I've worked as the Chief of Criminal Trials at the Attorney General's office here in Alabama. And now I am back at the District Attorney's Office as the Chief Deputy District Attorney. And like my sister said, I love to laugh. So that's if you had to say anything, what would my hobbies would be on my downtime? Anything that makes me laugh, that keeps that balances life for me.
So today we're really going to talk about purpose. This is my podcast that's dedicated to spirituality. And so, Azzie, the first question I have for you is, when you hear these words, Azzie was created with purpose in mind, what do these words mean to you?
I feel that my purpose, really, when it boils down to it, is pouring into people, investing in people, pouring into people, standing up for those who can't speak for themselves. I abhor anything that is dishonest. So justice is kind of the theme of my purpose.
And so, a lot of times we have our purpose, and it's expressed in different roles and different ways in our life. Can you talk about a little bit about how your purpose expresses itself even across different domains?
Yes, a lot of people associate their purpose with their job, and that's not necessarily the case. It's a bonus to be able to live out your purpose through your job, but I find that people I come in contact with on a daily basis, I have probably influenced in a spiritual way that I would have never imagined. And you find that out later on when they reach out to you. at my job, most people would say trying cases and working with the victims in the cases, that's dead on for the goal of what I do and targeted toward my purpose. But I found that pouring into my coworkers over the years, other females who end up in my office, males as well, but more females, especially Black females in my office. And the majority of the advice I give has nothing to do with career. It's really with their personal lives and really trying to touch their spiritual lives. So I try to live and carry myself in a way that if someone needs guidance, they do come to me. And then I find that I don't have to just volunteer information. I don't have to get in people's business. God has it set up where people come to me, and not only at work, but in any setting that I find myself in. And so I know that that's not me. I know that's all God doing that.
Awesome. Beautiful. And so I have a chapter in my book where I talk about God giving us breadcrumbs throughout our life that kind of lead us to our purpose, because many times I find that it's coming home to ourselves when we really start learning more about our purpose versus the things that have been layered on us that people may say that we may need this or that. But I found that God gives us our passions, our gifts, a lot of that, which you've talked about, and also our life experiences help guide us to our purpose. And I want you to take a moment to think about some of your breadcrumbs, specifically for Azzie, that have helped you really define or get on your path towards your purpose, even though that's something that's always unfolded. What are some of the things that have happened in your life from being childhood Azzie, high school Azzie, college Azzie, law school Azzie, to where Azzie is today?
Well, and the key word that you use, I think, is unfolded. I've been one of those people that I didn't come out the womb knowing I wanted to be an attorney or knowing that I wanted to be a prosecutor. But I look back at some of the gifts I have been given, like the ability to be a great speaker. Looking back now, I remember when I was in kindergarten and I was given a speech to say for a program, can't remember what the program was about. And I learned it in one night and came back and recited for my kindergarten teacher. Well, our Aunt Gracie, who was also a teacher at that school, said, well, if she can learn that in one night, we're going to give her something else. And so I took that as a challenge. It was a longer poem that I had to learn. And I was able to recite that poem, learn it in one night. I would be able to memorize it. As older I get, the harder that's become. I also, my senior year in high school, the first time I ever even considered the career choice, I was in high school. My classmates, several of them were not going to graduate because they had failed one of the English teachers' final exams. And I didn't have that teacher, but I knew she was tough. And when I say a lot of, I think almost an entire different classes that she taught or seniors were going to fail and would not be able to graduate. So I went to the principal at the time, Mr. Jefferson, and asked him to just give him an opportunity to retake that exam. And he said, we can't do that. The rules don't allow for that. And I was like, well, where are the rules? And he said, well, it's just, what we've always done. Your exam grade is your exam grade. And I said, well, it's not in black and white. And so you kind of get to make that choice. And so he decided to let them retake the exam. And most of them were able to pass that exam and graduate. So at that time, I figured if I can influence him to do something that is out of the norm, maybe law school might be a choice for me. And so that was the first time I really thought, well, maybe I can do this. Speaking up for other people, maybe I can do this. There was a time, I started out the district attorney's office as a part-time secretary. I was there as a victim service officer, and I went to law school during that time. And the funniest story about me going to law school was that I was working third shift, and I submitted my law school application to the Jones School of Law, which was in Montgomery, Alabama, where I was working at the time. And I didn't complete the entire application process. You take the LSAT, but then you have to pay for a subscription for it to be sent out, your scores to be sent out to the law school. And I just didn't do that. So I get off third shift, laying in the bed asleep, just falling asleep. I get a call from the dean, and he said, well, if you're going to start next week, we're going to accept you on a probationary basis until you can get that done. We'll go ahead and accept it so you can get started. So I had gotten accepted, really wasn't ready to go to law school at all. Didn't complete the process, but God made that possible. And so there I went off to law school the very next week. So God wanted me in law school. And there are a number of things that, it's easy now for me to think back, especially after reading your book, Breadcrumbs to Purpose, that helped make me make the decision to go back to the district attorney's office to work, where most people probably would think that would be going backwards. But there's no going backwards when God tells you something to do. So, but those are some of the tidbits and the breadcrumbs that were kind of dropped along the way.
I think that's beautiful. I had never heard you talk about your experience in talking to the principal for those students. That's the first time I've heard their story. And I hear the word advocate. I see the word advocate when I hear you doing that. But talk a little bit about how the role sometimes that you take as as a prosecutor or a victim service officer, how does that tie to advocacy?
Well, when I was a victim service officer, I worked with victims of domestic violence. I worked with the family members of homicide victims. And so a lot of times the prosecutor may be disconnected from what the family is actually going through because they're so tied to being ready for trial and being prepared for trial. So it was my job to make sure that they understood what they were about to go through, because the criminal justice system can be tricky. If you've never had any experience in that manner in the law, you have to explain to them what a grand jury is and what the standard that's how it differs from grand jury. And so I was in law school at the same time, and so I was able to observe in court, what attorneys did, what they shouldn't do. But a lot of times I was able to get through to the attorney why a certain victim may feel this way or why they may need to pay attention. But on the other hand, if I had an excellent prosecutor who could deliver the results and had a great heart and the family members were not understanding why we were going this route, I was able to connect with them and make that plain. And even as being a prosecutor, I'm speaking up for those who have been victimized. But at the same time, because of a prosecutor's job is just not to get a conviction, I have to look out for defendants to make sure they're being represented adequately and they're not being overlooked and their rights are being met. And so you kind of have to look at it from every aspect, being a prosecutor.
Awesome. So when you were talking, I kept thinking, it's funny, as you're talking, I heard the word advocate. And then as you were talking now, I started thinking about Esther in the Bible, how she was in a position to be an advocate, and how God can position different people, in different positions and roles to be an advocate and often bring a voice that's often not thought of, or the voice from somebody who's typically pushed to the sidebar or pushed to the margins, to the side of the road. Their voice may not be heard as much, but then an advocate who's almost in the middle, translating, but also using their positional advantage to be an advocate for somebody. So I thought about Esther. So maybe, you're going to talk about Esther soon somewhere. But I just thought about that while you were talking. And so what we want to do now, I want to take a break and we're going to show the trailer for my book, Breadcrumbs to Purpose, that you've already mentioned. And I loved hearing how reading that helped you kind of think about your breadcrumbs along the way. So everybody tune in to this quick commercial break and we'll be right back.
The seed of purpose is within us. But are you giving it enough light and water to grow? Sometimes we have too many objects in frame, making it hard to focus. We let detrimental relationships get in the way. Or we leave our joy out to be stolen by comparing our lives to what we see on our phone screens. Who are you? Why are you here? These are the questions the Creator wants to help us answer. On our self-discovery journey to finding our purpose, God leaves us clues, breadcrumbs. If we can silence the noise and take a closer look at our lives, our relationships, our gifts, we'll see they're all breadcrumbs leading us like the North Star to our purpose.
Hey everybody, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the trailer for my book. You can find the book on Amazon. But today I want to remind you that we are interviewing my very own sister, Azzie Taylor. Azzie, welcome back. Remind everybody who may have just tuned in who you are again.
Again, I'm Azzie Taylor. I have 2 daughters. I'm a prosecutor, a lifetime prosecutor. And so I'm just happy to be here and glad to be back.
Okay, so now I want to shift to this conversation that I love to just hear from people who are in different walks of life. You know, a lot of times we talk about purpose, people typically, or calling or passions, people typically think about clergy. But I really love interviewing everyday people who have really tapped into their purpose and who I know has a strong spiritual foundation, and that they take their spirituality with them into every domain that they go in a healthy way. And so this segment for you, I want to entitle it The Well. The Well, really talking about God being our source and our staying connected to the well, where we go back to be nourished and renewed. And so what I want to talk about and just ask you, you know, in your own way, how do you maintain your connection to God, our source, our well of all? So
Because of our upbringing, it's kind of hard to be. I mean, if you know me and we are in a conversation, you're going to know really quickly where my help comes from, and that's from God. And so it is a way of life for me. You know, now we're not in the church like we used to be in the actual building. And so you have to find a way to stay connected. I didn't want to be one of those people that every time something was wrong, I'm closer to the Lord. And then when things are going great, you know, I don't need you, Lord, as much. So there, for me, you know, having daughters helped me a lot because, you know, I have books that we read together and the Bible that we may do study. And I have one of them that's very curious and will ask deep questions that sometimes I might have to go and research. Music is very big for me. I feel God's presence like no other on some songs. But I do, knowing what I have to face in my job, I know I can't do that alone. I know that's I have to have God with me, or I'll run with my tail tucked, running back to the house every day, probably in tears if I didn't. But it's a way of life for me. It's not something. I think I read something the other day said, as it was written from God. Don't forget what you're seeing, forget what I have told you. So I am constantly reading, constantly looking at sermons online, constantly just kind of pouring into myself so I can continue to do what God has for me to do.
I love hearing that. I love hearing that, knowing, you know, a lot of times you can grow up a certain way and you kind of go in another direction from it, but it has been like that's something you can't really do over. You can't really replace the spiritual foundation that we got from our parents, that's something that
Right,
you
right.
just, you know, I just don't even know how people live and operate without having that. And I know that we can come along and we can grow, and that
Right.
God makes himself known to us where we are based on our current perspective and our current position. But I cannot imagine my life and some of the things I've been through
Right.
if I would have made it through without my spiritual foundation. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a pastor.
Yeah.
Like I, you know, even my corporate job, like there's some situations where I literally have to have faith and know and believe that I can do this because God said I can, you know, and I wasn't placed in this position, this job role, just to be here to diminish myself and
Right.
say I can't do this. So this thought that I can do anything that God desires for me to do that's in the will of God and associated with my purpose is something I strongly stand on. And I know that it comes from my childhood.
Right. And you know, you can take that for granted, but you know, I've been in times where I've been riding and nobody else in the car with me, and you wonder how did you get so blessed to have the parents, the lineage that you had, you know, the grandparents who were God-fearing people, and how prevalent that carries over generations and generations to come. And if I had not had God's word reported to me, you know, I wouldn't feel comfortable when I leave this world that my girls and my grandkids and great grandkids. So it is definitely a blessing, I think, and I do think it's favor, and I really don't take that for granted at all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So another question I have for you, I always notice that, and you said it earlier, a lot of times that you mentor women or guide women, and from the wisdom that God has placed in you. Because a lot of times I know you give wisdom to people that you may not have been in that situation before. So sometimes there's that experiential wisdom, and then sometimes that's just that wisdom that comes from God. And I believe a lot of times that you carry a wisdom. And I know that I've talked to you in some of my most crucial moments in life, job, career, former marriage, whatnot, hopes and dreams, and that wisdom that you've gotten. But I've also seen you really be that type of woman that root for other women. And whenever you find a space where other women are coming to another woman, or kind of drawn into the space, almost like a moth to a flame in a healthy way, you do realize, and I do realize, that that woman has to be somebody that is actually putting out good, because that's what's making them come in their direction. And so I believe
Right.
that. And so our new vice president, Kamala Harris, had a quote that her mother gave her and said, that told her, you know what, you may be the first to do a lot of things, but don't make sure that you're not the last one. You may be the first to do a lot of things, but make sure that you are not the last one to do them. When you hear that in the context of your own life as Azzie Taylor, the mother, the prosecutor, the public speaker, what do you think of?
I am nothing if my the people that work under me can't go on to do bigger and better things. I'm nothing if my girls do not know the word of God and I haven't poured the same wisdom, the same confidence in them to get through life. I just feel that that is my calling, is to, you know, my gifts were not given to me just for me to hoard and for me to compete with other people. But I was studying yesterday, you know, valuing relationships. And when I mean relationships, that's with a spouse, coworker, you know, family members or whatever. And why should we value relationships? Number one, you know, you're supposed to love God first. And then he also says, you know, love them like they're your neighbor. So God values relationship. And if you are, if God values relationship that much, then you need to live your life in a way where you can pour or be that light for other people. If you're going to be a light for other people, there are certain attributes you have to carry with you. There are certain moral standards that you have to have, because nobody's going to come to somebody that's negative. They're not going to come to somebody who is derogatory or putting them down. So I believe part of my calling, and I've done it with numerous female attorneys, personnel in the courthouse, janitors that come into my office. And this has been way prior for me being an attorney. And you just have to motivate people and encourage people. Life is difficult for all of us. And if you can give that person a reason to go on or to keep pushing or to keep climbing and striving, my question is, why not? Why wouldn't you do it? I read something the other day. It was like, I'm not going to compete with you because I want all of us to win. And if I'm going to be a first at anything, like our vice president said, and if I'm the last, I fail. I hadn't poured back in anybody behind me to get them there. If I am the last, I have failed. And so that's kind of the way I view it. So how I carry myself open the doors for other people behind me, but we got to do more and just let that door open. We got to prepare them for that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That is very beautiful. One of the things that I noticed, and it ties into what we just talked about, when you were sworn in this last go around for, is it Chief Deputy District Attorney? Is that the role that you're in now? You were sworn in, your daughters, my nieces held the Bible, but then there were girls who were there from the community, young ladies who were there from the community that stood with you and your daughters when you were sworn in. That stood out to me so much as a Black female. That stood out to me so much because I wasn't expecting it, and so to see it. But I want you to talk about why that was so important for you to have those young ladies stand with you.
You know, at home, I'm mama, and my daughters didn't really get the real understand what I do and the importance of what I do because I'm just mama. I'm the one that cook the meals and get the trash out or whatever that needs to be done. And that's what they see. Other girls like them in the community. Same thing with their parents. Some of those little girls that were with me, parents are engineers. Some of those little girls that with me, parents are doctors. And I think actually one was an attorney. And so we have professional positions and jobs we want our kids to work toward, but we never stop to show them. Because when they're in their school, they're just seeing the teacher, and that's awesome. We want you to see the teacher, but if we're going to be pushing you to go, for instance, to medical school, and you've never seen a doctor at work, so I think it's really important that we begin to show. Because, you know, we can talk all day long, you know, you got to walk the walk. So we need to begin to show, and we as a society, I think, are failing our kids in that way. So I wanted those little girls to see that what was happening was something monumental. Wanted them to know that I'm no different from them. They're no different from those two little daughters that I have that were standing there. I'm just their mama who takes out the trash. They're no different. So what I'm doing is nothing that you can't do. And in that audience were the fire chief. In that audience was the attorney general. In that audience was the liaison for the state of Alabama dealing with law enforcement, many police officers, judges. They are people just like you and I. And I think that's where we are missing the boat. Prior to the pandemic, I was supposed to start a public speaking class for the church that my daughters go to the after school program and the summer program for, but you know, it ended up getting canceled. And that was one of my goals, is just to pour back, especially into our girls, because we lack the confidence. You know, we see TV basically glorifying what I think sometimes are the wrong things. And so our girls began to have low self-esteem because they're constantly comparing themselves to something that's on television or something that's in a music video or on social media. And we have to change that if we're going to change how they view themselves and what they're able to do and accomplish in life.
Yeah, and I think that's why that's so important. Like the young lady who read the poem, wrote a poem and read the poem at the presidential inauguration. To me, that was just monumental. And, you know, I was thinking, the first person I thought about were your girls. Like, I hope they saw this outside of Kamala Harris, that there was somebody else here in a position where their voice was heard. And of course we saw Michelle, but this young lady, because of her age, it just made me like, I feel like my nieces could identify with her.
And what I love about it is she was her. She didn't put on any airs. She didn't get the I have no problem with extensions or anything like that, but she wore her hair, her natural style, because I've seen photos before. I think they said Oprah had offered to buy her a coat, but she had already bought the long yellow coat. So Oprah gave her earrings instead. And she was herself, and she was genuine, which what America is missing in some of our leaders and role models today. She was genuine. And she just came across to me, seeing that, because I didn't know that was coming, was almost more monumental to me than seeing a Black female president.
Yeah, vice president. Yes.
The kids can relate.
Yes.
I could relate.
Yes. Yes, I could too. And I love seeing her hair. I love that she was, I loved everything about her, and her speech, her cadence, it all just, I could have jumped through the TV.
Right. Yep. Be you.
Be authentically you, and you can do that and still be in purpose and on purpose. Yeah. Yes. Right. So as we get ready to go, I wanted to see if you had any parting words. They can be what you want people to know about you, or they can be just some words of encouragement to the many women who are going to watch this segment.
I do want to encourage those who, at some point in all of our lives, we're going to go through rough periods, and when we almost want to give up. And what I want to impart is just trust God. We want to see that entire staircase and where it leads, but really you got to take one step at a time. And so you got to continue to push yourself. And so I just want to encourage people that get down, because I've been in those situations, to continue to trust God and lean on God. God will send a lot of times somebody along the way that will encourage you. And, I love that poem by Langston Hughes, Mother to Son. And it's like, don't you sit down on those crystal stairs. We can't afford to. Our ancestors have done way too much, over 400 years of oppression for us to get to this point where we've had it so easy in comparison to because I wouldn't have made it on a cotton field. I'll tell you that now, but so easy in comparison to what we have now. Yes, we have obstacles against us. So we can't sit down, because when you sit down, that person that was supposed to see you, like my 13-year-old, my 11-year-old that need to see their aunt who's doing so well, if you had given up, they would never see that. And so your life is not about you. What you do in life is not about you. You are a light on a hill, and you need to let that light shine for others. And if you give up, that's not going to happen. So it's encouragement. And I think, people are hurting all over the world. People are dying. There's so much going on. And so just keep moving and keep your focus on God. Stay connected to that source.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Stay connected to the well. And before you even said it, a lot of times, we can take breaks, but we can't quit. We can take breaks. We can sit down. We can take a deep breath, and we can tend to our needs, but we don't get to quit. And we haven't earned the right to quit. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, right. I told my girlfriend this week, I said, look, it's all right to cry. Cry, get it out. If you want to feel sorry for yourself for a little bit, but you're going to have to get up. Because if you don't get up, the alternative is you dead. Okay, so you're gonna have to get up and keep it moving. And if you're gonna keep the same lifestyle you got and be alive, you might as well do it in strength.
Yes, yes. Don't pitch a tent and stay there.
Yeah, exactly.
Pitch a tent and stay there. And I think that's encourage the women who are listening. When you have your moments, make sure that you find safe spaces to share your moments. And you move through those moments, but you don't get to pitch a tent and stay there because you have not earned that right. And I know some mental health therapists are probably listening like, what is she saying? No, at some point you got to move through it, and move forward, because God has given you everything you need to move forward. It may not look like how you want it to look, but he's giving you everything you need to move forward. And I, hopefully you guys have gotten a chance to see, my sister in the way that I see her. And she's so much more than I see. And so that's why I want to take a moment to highlight her on today. If you're interested in being a guest on my podcast, just go to evamelton.com, look me up, send me a message, and we'll get in contact with you. But Azzie, thank you so much. I mean, I could ask you questions all day, but I'm not going to do that to you. But hopefully after you see this, you'll say, well, I'll come back. But yeah, you are like a jewel. And I'm just so glad, number one, I'm glad for my nieces, but I'm just so glad that you're in my family and the other women in our family have such access to you. So grateful for you. Thank you so much. You're welcome back anytime. And I know that eyes have not seen, ears have not heard what God has in store for your life. And I'm just so happy I get to be so up close and root for you.
But thank you for inviting me, and I love you and look up to you in so many ways as well.